Okay, sit yourself on your left. Come into a cross leg position. Not sure where my glasses are. They're there. So sit yourself in a cross leg position and just have a little wriggle about. Just feel that you're sitting evenly. Hold onto your knees and lift up into the chest, drawing your shoulders down away from your ears. So just spend some time just taking deep, indulgent inhalations. And as long as there's no heart conditions or blood pressure issues, take that deep breath and then just hold it just for a second or two, just very briefly with no grip within the hold. And then release with a normal exhalation. So we just engage with the breath from the inhalation, drawing that inhalation in through the nose into the body. Look down at the floor, look at something that's not moving. And then bring your hands into Namaste. Just continue to breathe, but without the retention, just normal inhalations, normal exhalations, filling the lungs from the bottom to the top and emptying the lungs from the top to the bottom. Just observe how engagement with the breath, deeper inhalations bring deeper connection with your energy. Close your eyes if you haven't done already, and just focus on filling the lungs and emptying the lungs, no longer holding the breath. Soften the intercostal muscles between the ribs. Very gently draw your chin down to meet your chest. Spend a moment to seek to generate a genuine, heartfelt sense of gratitude for something or someone or somewhere. Something that brings positive energy into your existence. Hold on to that feeling of abundance in the heart area. Bring the backs of your hands down toward your knees, palms facing upwards. And then as you raise your head, allow your eyes to gently open. Hold onto your knees, lift up into the chest, driving the spine upwards. Take a deep inhalation in through the nose. And then with an exhalation, turn to the left, giving yourself space around the chest to expand. So keeping your elbows wide enough apart. So you're not clamping your arms into the sides of the body. You're giving yourself space in the armpit chest. So the more non-resistant we can make the breath, the more energy we glean from each inhalation. And then come back to the center, hold onto your knees, lift up into the chest, drive the spine upwards, take a deep inhalation in through the nose. And then turn to the left. And then come back to the center. Just come off your lift. Sit back on your heels. Just let your legs just adjust into the floor for a moment. So with the knees apart, with the big toes together, just allow your shins to sink into the floor. So if you're on a soft floor like I am, so I've got a carpet underneath my mat, it helps the legs feel like they really connect with the floor more firmly. If you've got a harder floor and you feel that your shins don't connect with the floor firmly, then put a blanket underneath your legs, and then your legs will connect with the floor more effectively. So push your shins, the whole of the shin bone, especially around the bottom and the middle of the shin. Press that into the floor to activate the thighs. Lift out of the hips, up into the armpits, lift up into the chest, and then keeping the back rod straight. Hinge at the hips, reach forwards with your hands, and then just indulge in that stretch. The first stretch of the day, just keeping the seat bones down on the heels, keeping the front chest lifted, not being in a rush to just throw yourself into the pose. And then bring your forehead down. So breathe evenly and deeply, listening to the breath. Stretching your arms away, turning your tailbone inwards, lengthening into the palms of the hands. Your hands as wide apart as the mat. Turn your toes under, come up onto your knees, turn your toes under, and then come up into dog down. Again, just feel how your body at first resists in areas. So bend your knees, draw yourself into the pose, draw the shoulder blades in towards the front chest. Feel how the hands make contact with the floor. Is it just the heels of the hands that bear the weight of the upper body, or can you lengthen from the heel of the hand into the palm, into the fingers? Keep lifting the seat bones up to the ceiling, tighten the kneecaps, pressing the kneecaps into the fronts of the kneecaps into the backs of the knees, turning the fronts of the thighs in, and lifting the seat bones up. Breathing evenly and deeply listening to the breath. So initializing the body into the practice. If there's a lot of weight on your shoulders, push the palms of the hand, the fingers into the floor. Step your feet forwards, come up into a standing position, and then have some blocks for your hands for half uttanasana, just to really initialize the legs into our practice. So bring your feet as wide apart as the mat. Spread the toes. Activate the kneecaps. Activate the thighs. Turning the fronts of the thighs inwards so that you feel that the backs of the thighs broaden outwards. That will give you space in your hips. Lift up into the chest. Raise your arms. Bring your arms wide. Open the chest to the skies. And then hinge at the hips. Hinging at the hips. And then reach down. Find your hands, blocks underneath your shoulders. Turn the toes in a little more. Lift the shins out of the ankle socket. Lift the kneecaps away from the shins. Lift the thigh muscles away from the kneecaps. Turn the fronts of the thighs in. Turn the backs of the thighs outwards, and then lift the backs of the thighs up to the seat bones and project into the chin and the chest. Just breathing evenly and deeply. If you can go down any lower, then do. Stay at the higher lift if you've got back problems. Just continue to work your legs really evenly, lengthening the legs away from your arms, lengthening the chest away from your legs. If you can reach down to the floor, then do. But with that, if you start to lose that stretch of the chest, if you start to bend your knees, then go higher on the lift. Otherwise, just really try to turn the legs away from the chest away from the legs. If you can reach down, keeping the chest lifted, get hold of your heels, lengthening the chest, then do. Just stay at whichever stage works for you. And just listen to the body. Listen to your body's reaction to the pose. Lift the skin of the legs like you're pulling on a pair of socks all the way up to the hips. Just observe how your muscles respond to the action of the pose. And then just come back to half uttanasana. And then bring your hands into your hips, come up into a standing position, bending your knees on the way up if you need to, and then come into tadasana. Just have the inner edge of your feet together, lift up into the chest. Breathe evenly and deeply listening to the sound of the breath. Bring your arms out nice and wide into the chest, and then step the feet apart, and then turn the toes in, the left toes in, the right leg and foot all the way out, and then just come into trikonasana. Now you might wonder why trikonasana is nearly always the first pose of the sequence, and then we kind of deviate away from that. Well, just feel what trikonasana does for your legs. Feel what it does in the hips, in the chest, in the arms, in the legs. So just feel how it stretches out the legs. It helps to correct stooped shoulders, gives you flexibility in the spine. So it's always a good pose to come into first, because A, it's familiar, but B, it's a really good way of bringing energy and life into the limbs. So it's not just the legs. Often it just feels like it's the legs, but can you extend from the hips up into the spine? Can you turn the chest up to face the ceiling? Can you lengthen out from the heart region into both arms? Can you lengthen the neck away from the spine? Reach up, come back to the center, swap the feet around. So the right toes in, the left leg and foot all the way out. Reach up into the chest. Again, lengthen from the feet into the hips, from the hips up into the chest, from the chest out into the arms. And then come down. So just feel what trikonasana brings to the body. So not only does it initiate the limbs into the pose, it clears out the sinuses. It helps you to breathe more deeply. Breathe evenly. And then reach up with the top hand, come back to the center, bring the feet parallel, and then step or jump. Feet back together, come back into Tadasana. Just breathe evenly and deeply, listening to the sound of the breath. So we're going to do utkatasana, the chair pose. So if you've got dodgy knees, you might want to do this standing against the wall with your feet slightly away from the wall, and as you bend, you just slide yourself down the wall. Otherwise, you can do this just in the middle of the room. So just have the inner edge of the feet together, and then raise your arms up, extend up towards the ceiling, virasana. Lengthen the little finger side up towards the ceiling, and then clamp the knees together. So that's an important part of keeping the legs firm. So we often think that because we're going down in this pose, that the action of the pose is to sink. But if you sink in this pose, it becomes incredibly heavy. So the knees may bend, but from the hips up into the armpits, up into the chest, are lifting up. So keep the knees clamping together, bend the knees, and then sit on an imaginary chair, bending those knees, but reaching out of the hips up into the chest. Soften the jaw and the tongue and the throat. Soften the breath. Take full, deep, indulgent inhalations. Lifting out of the chest. And then come back to the center, and then release your arms. Take some deep inhalations. Deep exhalations. Just observe how utkatasana warms up the body from the inside. It raises the heartbeat a little. It lifts your energy. Raise your arms up, clamp your knees together, and then lift up like you're holding onto ropes. You're holding onto ropes on the ceiling, and you're trying to lift up towards the ceiling as you continue to kind of increase the distance between the arms and the ceiling. So keep reaching up. Draw the belly button towards the spine. Tuck the tailbone in slightly. Breathe. And then straighten the legs. And then come back into Tadasana. Just observe the warmth, the little bit of fire that you ignite within the physical body. Just listen to the breath. Listen to the sound of the breath as it enters and as it exits. Taking deep inhalations, deep exhalations. And then spread the toes of your left foot. Spread the toes broadly of the left foot. So we can do tree pose, vrksana. So you might want something nearby just to kind of help you to balance. A wall behind you is good. Spread the toes, tighten the kneecap really firmly of that left leg. If you can, pull your shorts up a little, then do, just so that you can bring the foot onto skin. So get that leg really firmly in Tadasana, and then bring the right foot up into the inner groin. Push the foot into the thigh, push the outer thigh into the foot so that there's compactness at the hips, and then lift up into the chest. Look at something that doesn't move. So we haven't raised our arms yet, we're just lifting up into the chest, purposefully extending our arms down to the floor. So get that standing leg in Tadasana, and then raise your arms. Bring them into advisable, palms of the hands facing each other. Lifting up into the chest. So keep that firmness between the leg and the foot. That compactness. Listen to the sound of the breath. Feel that you can really lift from the hips up into the armpits, up into the arms. And release the arms. Release the leg. Come back into Tadasana. So just observe how the legs feel. So chances are they feel uneven. But that's a good observation, because when we've energized one leg and not the other. So lift your shorts up on the other leg if you can, just to give you better kind of traction between the foot and the leg. Spread the toes of the right leg. Tighten the kneecap. Be in Tadasana in that right leg, and maintain it as you bring the left foot as high up into the thigh as you can get it. Squeezing that outer thigh, standing thigh into the foot, pushing the foot into that standing thigh, lifting from the hips up into the armpits. If this bent leg side doesn't feel evenly kind of long, Then lengthen from the hip down into the knee, and then lift up into the armpits, and then raise your arms. Breathing evenly and deeply, listening to the sound of the breath. Look at something that's not moving. And then release the arms, release the leg, and then come back into Tadasana. And then maybe observe how the legs feel long, like we have grown in height a little. So lengthen the arms down, lift up into the chest. Just breathe evenly. Bring your arms out nice and wide in towards the chest, and then step or jump your feet, go wide as wide as you can. Have some blocks nearby if you know that you're not going to reach the floor for prasarita, padottanasana. Bring your feet wide, bring the legs wide apart, and then turn your toes in. With your hands on your hips, tighten your kneecaps. Push the feet into the floor and then lift up into the hips, lift from the hips up into the chest. Have your hands on your hips, winging the elbows towards the back of the room, trying to squeeze the elbows towards each other so that the shoulder blades draw together and the front chest, the collarbone broadens. So really activating those legs, turning the toes inwards, and then hinging at the hips, just like we were doing in utkatasana. Hinge at the hips, keep the chest lifted, and then reach down and find the floor. Maybe turn your toe once you've got hold of the floor, or you're using your blocks under your hands. So you can always use, rather than rounding your back, it's better to have blocks underneath the hands rather than kind of letting your back become rounded. So turn the toes in, turn the shins in, turn the thighs in, keep the kneecaps tightened, broaden the backs of the thighs, lift the seat bones, lift the tailbone, and then project the chin and the chest forwards. Just breathing evenly and deeply, listening to the breath. You might want to just stay here, or if you know that you've got a bit more flexibility in your hips, then keep the chest long. Bring the chest down to the floor, and bring the top of the head onto the floor. Bring the heels of the hands in line with the heels of the feet. If your head doesn't reach the floor, then you can put a block underneath the head. Try not to let your legs hit forwards to find the floor with your head. Hit the legs back. Breathe evenly and deeply, listening to the sound of the breath. Keep the shoulders away from your ears, like you're going to go up into a headstand. So in headstand, you always want to you need to keep the shoulders as far away from the ears as you can to protect the neck. Use that technique here as well. Okay, come back to the halfway point. Bring the palms of the hands down onto the floor, bend your knees, and then step or jump your feet back together. Come back into Tadasana. And then raise your arms up and over your head for Virasana, keeping the shoulders down away from your ears. And then very gently just release your arms. Come down onto your front and then bring your hands as wide apart as the mat. Let the fingers on the edge of the mat, stretch the thumbs towards each other. Turn your toes under. Have your feet as, hip width apart this time. I think I said as wide apart as the mat. Have the hands shoulder width apart, have the feet hip width apart. And then come up into dog down. Breathing evenly and deeply listening to the sound of the breath. And then come down onto your knees and then sit back on your heels. Sitting up on the heels, just observing the energy of the physical body of the upper arms and of the upper legs. Just listening to the sound of the breath. And then come into proper virasana. So the knees are together. Let's come up onto your knees. Bring the knees together. Bring the feet apart. Drawing the backs of the calves away from the backs of the knees. And then see if you can sit down in between the 2 feet. If you can't, then just get yourself a block or 2 or whatever you need to give yourself support. So sometimes I can sit all the way down, other times I can't. Today I need a block to sit on today, so that's fine. So just observe how the legs feel in this, with the knees together as much as they can come, and then the feet either side of the hips. Get the thumbs into the inner heels, and then just gently encourage the inner heels to rotate outwards away from the hips. So we're not trying to crack any bones here. We're just trying to bring the little toe side of the foot down onto the floor. So virasana is really good for flexibility of the knees. You can always put a blanket or a belt around underneath the back of the knees to give you more space if you need it. And then raise your arms up to the ceiling. Extend up into the little fingers. Like you're doing urdhva, and then interlock the fingers right into the webbing of the hands, and then turn the palms all the way up. So you keep your thumbs in contact, squeezing the outer elbows inwards. Take a deep inhalation, and then turn to the right with the exhalation. Parsva virasana. and then come back to the center, lift up into the chest, and then turn to the left. Come back to the center. Just release your arms. Just observe which way you have interlocked your fingers, which index finger is on the top, and then just release for a moment. Just feel the energy in the shoulders and in the arms and in the hands. So this time, stretch your arms out in front, interlock the fingers the other way around, so the other index finger is on the top of the stack, and then turn the palms all the way out, raise your arms, keep your thumbs in contact. Elevating the chest up to the ceiling. Taking a deep inhalation and then turning to the right side. And then come back to the center. Take a deep inhalation, and then with an exhalation, turn to the left. And then come back to the center. Just release your arms, just unhook the hands and lift up into the chest, driving the chest upwards. Just feeling the energy in the arms and in the shoulders and in the neck. And then draw your chin down to meet your chest and lift the anal sphincter up to diaphragm region. And then just focus on taking some deep inhalations, deep exhalations. Filling the lungs from the bottom to the top, allowing the breath to overflow over the top of the lungs into the arms and the chest and into the legs. And then release Mula Bandha, release Jalandhara Bandha. And then come up onto your knees. So we've been in virasana for a fair while, so your legs will feel maybe a little kind of stuck. So bring your hands shoulder width apart. Just gently turn your toes under and then come up into dog down, just slowly straightening the legs. So straightening the legs and then bringing the heels down just to refresh the energy of the legs. just to stretch out the calf muscles. Just bringing fresh energy into the legs. And then come down onto your knees and then sit back on your heels. And then come down into supta padottanasana, soles of the feet together, knees apart. And just take some deep inhalations, deep exhalations. Feel how gravity broadens and opens the pelvis. If that's too strong for you, then put some blocks underneath the outsides of the thighs. Otherwise, just using the pose to broaden the pelvis. So we've done a lot of chest opening, a lot of just bringing our attention into the energy of the body. So an open pelvis and an open chest are really good for positive thinking. Just breathe evenly and deeply, listening to the breath. Stretch your arms up to the ceiling, interlock the fingers, turn the palms all the way out, and then extend your arms along the floor. You can use blocks or a blanket underneath your arms if there's stiffness in your shoulders. Otherwise, just using the floor to open the front of the body. Just observe if you can breathe more deeply, more effortlessly. Release your arms. Swap the interlock of the fingers, turn the palms all the way out, and then again stretch your arms along the floor. So sometimes supta padottanasana makes a good alternative to an inversion. There's a calming action. There's all of the openness at the front of the body, giving us positive energy. And then just release your arms, just rest your hands on your lower ribs for a moment. And then get a blanket from underneath your head, draw your knees together, have your feet apart, just resting your hips for a moment. And then stretch out your legs, just come up onto your elbows for a moment. And make sure you're in a really good straight line right down the center of the mat. Just move any equipment that's in the way out of the way. Just make sure that the blanket is well folded from underneath your head. If you're wearing glasses, it's nice to take them off for the last moment of sirvasana. Just allow the physical body to let go, release into the floor. Unhook the muscles of the arms and the legs. Allow the physical body to completely release into the floor. When we release our physical tension, we can connect with our physical energetic lightness. So connect with your energy by letting go of the muscles and engaging in the body's physical lightness that rises up to the top of the skin. Basking in that feeling of energetic lightness, using the in-breath and the out-breath to distribute that feeling evenly down into the tips of the toes, the tips of the fingers, and into the top of the head. Consciously breathing into the brain. Ready to disturb yourself, just wriggle your toes, wriggle your fingers, bringing yourself back into this pose of shavasana. And then draw your knees in towards your chest, just have a little rock from side to side, from top to bottom, just a grounding massage, bringing yourself back into the physical body, back into the room. And then very gently roll over onto your right side, just stay down for a breath or two. And then stretch out the top leg, come back up into a seated position. Just a final cross legs with your hands in the masti. Just a final spinal lift, driving the chest up to the ceiling. Drawing the breath into the abdomen. Be conscious of the energy that you have released through your practice this morning, that good, positive, healthy flow of clean energy that the extensions and the forward bends and the twists and the inversions bring to the body and to the mind. And then draw your chin down to meet your chest. Spend a moment to observe positive energy you've created. And then radiate that positive energy out into the world. And then release the backs of your hands down toward your knees, palms facing upwards. And then as you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open and the focus to softly come back. Thank you very much. Thank you. So hopefully you feel as though you really lifted your energy, you give yourself a good old stretch, and you're ready to put lots of good energy into the rest of your day. So thank you for joining me.